Hello, welcome to the October edition of the Untethered with Evernote Google Hangout, our Get Untethered Hangout. We are your hosts. I'm Stacey Harmon, and we've also got Kristi Willis, co-authors. Hi, Kristi. How you doing there?
Good.
We're co-authors of Untethered with Evernote Tips and Tricks for Independent Entrepreneurs, and we are bringing you a monthly hangout designed to expand in detail and give you training on some of the core concepts in the book. And this month we are talking about strategies for the ins and outs of finding and searching in Evernote. So very important skill that we cover in good depth in Chapter 3, as well as I think Chapter 6 you were saying, Kristi, as well. So we're going to expand upon that and show some screenshots and some use cases about how you can actually put the power of Evernote Search to find what you are looking for. You know, Kristi and I both were presenting at the Evernote conference, which just happened in San Francisco 2 weeks ago, and one of the takeaways that we had from there is that really you don't want to find things. Sorry, you don't want to search for things, you want to find things. And so Evernote's really on the leading edge of finding what you're looking for, and we're going to show you some of those ways where you can really work your system to retrieve what you're looking for. Both Kristi and I are Evernote ambassadors as well as Evernote Business Certified Consultants, so needless to say we don't have anything negative to say about Evernote. We love it, and it runs our lives. And we are happy to do this hangout. If this is your first time joining us, please be sure to check out some of our previous topics. This is probably I think this is the 5th one we've done, and we do them on a monthly basis, but there's a whole playlist on YouTube. They are recorded, and you can go back and view them at any time. We've covered things from, tips for organizing your Evernote to how to manage leads and business cards, task management, receipts, and now we're covering search. So we are glad to have you here, and we also have a coupon code for you at the end of the webinar for the book if you haven't yet purchased it, as well as a option for upgrading to a different version, especially now that we have the print version, if that's interesting for you. So please stay tuned till the end for further details about that. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Kristi, who's sitting in some lovely Austin weather.
I am sitting on the patio at the Hyatt Regency, so I've got Town Lake in the background, or I guess Lady Bird Lake now. And I will apologize now for background noise. I'm at a conference at the Hyatt, and this was the quietest place I could find. So we're just going to wing it and be untethered, as we often are. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get us started with the presentation piece of this. And just one second. All right. So as Stacey mentioned, we're going to talk about the ins and outs of Evernote Search today. And as part of that, just a little bit of how to get a hold of us, of course. As part of that, I guess we should have called it Evernote Find. I loved in the keynote speech that Phil Lieben, the CEO, gave, that he talked about that find is aspirational and search is kind of negative, that I'm searching around for things, but when I'm finding, that means I had a great positive reaction. So we just want to go through some of the little tips and tricks that you can use. And one of my favorite things about Evernote Search is that not only does it find the text in a note, which you would expect, but that it will find text and pictures or PDFs, and if you are premium or business, it will also look inside documents, and I'll show you an example of that. But it even finds handwriting, assuming that it's neat. So, and now we've got an emergency in the background, so sorry about that. With handwriting, I love being able to take a picture of my Moleskine notebook page and have it be able to find that, assuming that I've written in a way that something could decipher it. But you can see this great screenshot that Stacey has written the word Serrano on a taxi receipt, and when she did that search, it found that text. So really just fascinating that it's able to do that and that it does it very quickly. So love that it is able to find that handwriting there. The other really surprising thing for me is that it will find text in a picture. So here's a picture of the Evernote Conference 3, and just searching for the word Deutsch pulls up this picture that Phil has up on the screen. And so very powerful that you can search inside graphics, that it will find the handwriting, just makes it a very powerful thing. So when you type in a search phrase, some things can happen for you, and Stacey's going to talk some more about this a little bit later, but the more you use Evernote, the more notes will come up. So for example, we have a restaurant here in Austin called La Vie, and notice as I started to type that in, it had a number of suggestions about things that were going to come up, and I really wanted to be able to narrow where I was looking for it. And so one of the things that you can do is that you can set your context. So by default, it may be set to everything, which means it's going to search all of your notebooks and all of your notes, which may be a little much for you. Maybe you know that it's in a personal note, or maybe you know that it's in a specific notebook. Rather than searching through everything, changing your context will help narrow that framework. And that always appears at the top of that search box as we can begin to type a search term. So that's a really great way to narrow down what you're looking at, and I actually use that quite often to be able to limit my category there. And when you're typing in a search term, you don't have to just type in one word or one phrase, but you can use plain language, as they call it, to describe what you're searching for. So for example, I often record interviews, and I can quickly find any note with an interview or a recording in it by searching for notes with a wave attached to it. So here I was looking for notes with a wave in one of the magazine notebooks that I work for, and sure enough, over to the left, it pulled up a number of notes that contain those wave files. So that's really helpful. So you could do something like notes with PDF, but you don't have to type in just one phrase. You can type in plain language what you're looking for. So I love that you can use that descriptive search. And you can combine tags and keywords. So if you use tags, which I do, again, great example from the book. When I write for Edible Austin, for example, one of the magazines I write for, I will have a lot of pieces of research that go with the different articles, and sometimes I'll have multiple articles in the same issue. So what I do is I created an issue tag, and that allows me to narrow down just the notes for that issue, and then I could go even further. For example, if I just wanted to find the interview with chefs, I could have on the other side of the tag item in the search box, I could have put chef, and then it would just find the notes with that tag and the word chef, so it allows me to do that kind of compound searching. And again, I use this a lot because I am not going to create, let's see, I've been writing for Edible Austin for almost 6 years. If I created a notebook for every issue, I would have a ton of notebooks, and so instead, using that tag allows me to do that attribution of this goes with this issue, and then I can use that in my search, and that helps quite a bit. It also helps when I'm looking between notebooks, because while I have an Edible notebook, sometimes the notes are in a notebook that Lillian, my production assistant, and I share, because she's transcribing them and doing things with them. So again, using that tag lets me look across notebooks and be able to pull things up quickly. So I really like being able to do that tag search. The other really nice thing is if you are business and premium, not only will it search inside PDFs and graphics, but it will also, Evernote will also allow you to search inside a document. So, for example, I'm a part of an organization that does an online auction every year, so I decided to search for the words auction launch party, which are inside this Word document. And sure enough, it found that based on that term. So it wasn't anywhere inside the note. It was inside that document. And so one of the powerful parts of using Premium in Business is you get that expanded search capability into different document formats. If you use a search often, you can save it. On the Mac, you do that by performing the search and then choosing Edit, Find, and Save Search from the menu. If you're really using a lot, you could then add that search to your shortcut bar. On the Windows version, you can save a search by clicking the Save Search icon, which is the magnifying glass with the plus symbol on it on the toolbar. And the great thing about that is the next time I go to do a search, that those save searches will appear down at the bottom. So, for example, if I'll be looking, the online auction goes on for several weeks, so if I wanted to perform that search often over that 2-week period, I could go ahead and save it to my search, and that will pin it to the search list. So I'm going to turn it over to Stacey, and she's going to tell us about some of the advanced search criteria you can do. So those are some of the basics, but she's going to show us some of the fancy searching that you can do with Evernote. So Stacey, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let you take over.
Right. Okay. I am screen sharing. Excellent. All right, so Kristi's done a great job of laying out the foundations, and obviously we wanted to also remind you that there's a Q&A pod here in the Hangout. If you have questions as we're going through this, please feel free to type them in there, and if you have questions, if you're not viewing this live, the Get Untethered Facebook group is a great place to log your questions. There'll be a link for that at the end of the presentation. But we want to build upon some of those basic skills that Kristi laid out to help you kind of find what it is that you are looking to retrieve in Evernote. And the first thing that you want to keep in mind is, like, this is a recap. So she used the Serrano example, which we use in the book. You can see there in the upper right-hand corner, I'm searching for Serrano. And it does a brilliant job of, narrowing that down to 13 notes from 11,000 notes I have. So that there's an underlying experience that those of you who are Evernote users are familiar with, is search is really fast, right? So you can have a lot of notes in Evernote. Like I've got I've got 11,000, and it's searching down to 13. But what if that's not enough, right? So how do we go beyond that? And as she laid out, there are the ability to do these compound searches with different elements. And when you do a search, you have an option to narrow it based on the type of content that is contained in the notes. And this is just a screenshot of the options that are there, which really highlight some of the integrations that Evernote does, particularly with Post-it and with Moleskine. As well as these audio files and attachments, to-do lists, all of these different types of things. So if you know that you're looking for a note related to Serrano image in it, you can add that by simply clicking the Add button, and it'll add it to your search context up at the top. And then one nice feature on the Mac at the minimum is that if you highlight or hover over that
And we apologize. It sounds like we have lost Stacey's audio. Let's give her a second to see if we can get her back online. Stacey, are you there? Stacey?
Sure.
Okay, your audio cut out for a little bit.
Oh, sorry about that. Where did you lose me?
I would start again with this slide.
Okay, so if you are, what I was saying, sorry about that, as Kristi mentioned, if you hit, you can have compound searches, and so there's some advanced parameters down at the bottom that you can have, and if you want to search for to-do notes or Post-it notes or Moleskine, which really highlight some of the options and integrations that Evernote has with, these third-party companies like 3M and Moleskine, you can add those to the search. And up at the top, in the right, you can see that it will narrow it and do that compound search as Kristi was showing. And then a power user tip, particularly on the Mac, I will have to check if this works on the PC, but if you hover over that contains, you can actually change the type of item that you're searching for right there without having to add a search parameter down at the bottom. So that's really a power user move for those of you that are really using this compound search frequently. And then notice that the add search option has a lot of different options. So you're going to want to play around with those because there's lots of ways that you can kind of look for things. And that is how they kind of automate the process, If you're on a device, though, that doesn't have that advanced search criteria, they also offer a syntax for finding all of these things. And I'm going to create a, in the bottom of the recording of this Hangout that will get posted, I'm going to put the link to this post in the Evernote support forums, which actually identifies and gives you advanced search syntax that you can use to further refine your searches from whatever device you're on. So if you are on a iPad and you don't have the ability to add kind of that contains compound search operator, you can actually type in one of these operators and it will filter your search for you. So you can see here, you can search by notebook or by tag. One of the nice features I'm guessing that Kristi probably utilize occasion is you can remove a tag, so you can put the negative sign in front of things and have it find notes that are not tagged with a specific tag. You certainly can find things based on created and updated. There is a nomenclature that you need to follow. It needs to be year, month, date in order to find the proper elements, but that's all defined in this table. And again, we'll put the hyperlink into the supporting blog post so that you guys can practice those on your own as they matter to you. One of the ones that I tend to use quite a lot is the first one that's listed here, this in title. So what this does is it narrows the search to results that only include my keyword phrase in the title of the search of the note. So here's an example of that. I put in Serrano, and as you remember from our earlier slides, there were 13 results. But when I narrow that by putting in title colon with no space, and then add my search term, it restricts it down to the one note that has Serrano in the title. So that's how it works. The spacing is very important in this particular syntax. When you're actually typing in the syntax, you want to make sure that there are no spaces between the colon or between your search term. There's also something called related notes in Evernote that you might have noticed at the bottom. And I've actually was surprised that this was as functional as it is. It's helped me to discover content that I might not have thought I was looking for, but is relevant to kind of what I'm doing. So when you do a search, in this case I've done a search for Untethered with Evernote, and I was doing an Untethered with Evernote handout, right? So when I present, which I was doing last week, I'm providing digital handouts. And often I want to retrieve some of the information from a prior handout. So these related notes help me to get to that information quickly. Evernote's got a lot of context that it brings to your search, and this is a good example of that. They say, we know you're searching for this, but you might find that some of these things are related. And as you can see on that third note down at the bottom, it shows that Kristi was actually the author of that particular note. So if you are collaborating with others through Premium or Business, it's actually going to bring up some of the notes and the intelligence that's in your Evernote system from other people and places in Evernote's accounts. So really, really useful. And a related feature to Rolling Clipper. So if you, did you lose me again?
Yeah, but you're back. I did want to throw in, actually, if you could go back to that last slide, I just wanted to throw in that on the related notes, particularly when you're doing topic work. So you can imagine, like when I'm writing an article, I wrote an article about school food, and I had 75 pieces of research. So when I was searching and working on the articles, and I was working on a particular piece of it, that it was showing those related notes at the bottom, it really cut down on how much I was having to jump back and forth between going and digging through the notebook and being able to work with the pieces that I wanted during the article. So particularly when you're doing topical type of work, it becomes a very, very powerful feature.
Absolutely. And they bring that feature to the Web Clipper as well. So if you configure a setting in your Web Clipper, this is in Chrome, and I'll show you where the setting is after I demo what it does. If you do a Google search for something, in this case I searched for Untethered with Evernote, I'm not only going to get the Google results on the left-hand side, but you're going to see here on the right-hand side, it's going to tell you, it's going to index and search my personal Evernote account for phrases that match what I searched for. So that's really, really functional if you're actually trying to retrieve something that in the context of the web as well as your own personal notes. And this is just a matter of turning on a setting in the web clipper. So you want to go to the browser extensions and actually activate the related results feature of the web clipper. Do make sure you're on the latest version. This is for Chrome. It's 6.26. They've had it for several versions of it, but always want to upgrade on the web clipper to the latest and make sure that that related results. That way your search results will include your Evernote notes, which might shave seconds off of your research time, and that type of stuff compounds and adds up really easily. Another feature of search that I absolutely love, I call this the feature you didn't know you needed until you can't live without it. It's called Atlas Search. And assuming that location services are turned on your devices, meaning your iPhone, your iPad, your mobile tablet, your phone, or your computer, if location services are enabled, which, by the way, if Evernote ever asks you, do you want to allow Evernote to have access to your location services, you want to say yes, because that's where the power here comes from. You are going to have the location of all of the notes that you create tagged with and mapped on a map, and you can retrieve your notes based on geography, which this is a great use case in the sales professional, sales professional's life. So Kristi and I talked about this during the business card tutorial that we did a couple months ago. But basically here, I can go to Atlas. If I know that I was just in San Francisco at the Evernote conference a couple weeks ago, I can zoom in to San Francisco, and it actually mapped the notes that I created at the location. And it does a brilliant job of really geolocating where you are. So the Evernote conference was held in 2 different buildings right there on the pier at Fort Mason, and you can see my note generation in the different buildings. And this is encompassing both business cards as well as notes that I composed while I was there, and I can click through directly to those notes. So a good use case for this, again, for the sales professional is if you're actually using the business card feature, scanning feature, and you remember where you met somebody, you remember you met at a conference but you can't remember their name, I can actually pull it up from this location and get to their name. Or if you're at a conference and you remember that you learned something there, but you had further details about it, you can go back and retrieve that note based on the Atlas search. So really cool, progressive kind of functionality in terms of finding and retrieving what you're looking for. And then this is a hack that I wouldn't necessarily put in the find category, but it's something that I rely on a daily basis, and so I wanted to mention it in terms of finding materials that I'm looking for and finding notes that I'm looking for. I actually use the sort order by date updated to promote notes that I have been most actively or recently working on up to the top. So a lot of times, as I mentioned, I've got 11,000 notes, right? That's a lot of notes. If I was just working on something an hour ago, I can click either in the notebook that I think that note is in, like maybe I was in a client notebook, which would be designated by the number 1 on this screenshot, or maybe I'm going to actually click on business notes where number 2 is, and that's going to be 9,382 notes. That's not going to be that functional for me in that middle pane there. But if I choose to sort by date updated and put most recent at the top, then it really does a very good job of surfacing the content that I was working on just this morning or yesterday or very recently. And I find that I don't even think about it, but it's a tool. It's kind of a hack I use to find and retrieve information on a frequent basis. Kristi, do you use that in your retrieval as well?
Yeah, that's actually my default sort order so that I can see the things I've been working on most often up at the top of any list. And I do find that to be extraordinarily helpful. Yeah, I use that quite a bit.
Yeah, and so that's actually an interesting point in that Kristi's using it as her default sort order. For me, because of the way my system's structured, title is often a sort order that I use. I use note titles to really group things there. So title is often my default sort, but this helps me to retrieve things as well. And that title, sorting by title actually, come to think of it, does provide me an opportunity to retrieve as well, which gets into kind of naming conventions, which is something we covered in organizing your notes and in some of the other sessions that we did. You can see how it all kind of interplays. So I want to just kind of wrap up this section of it by showing you just a case study, kind of putting it all together with, say, an example. Say I'm got my Evernote account for the Untethered with Evernote book. And I know that my assistant created it, but I want to figure out kind of where we're at in a status report. So if I did a search in Evernote for Untethered with Evernote up at the top, it's going to come up with 274 notes, which makes sense because Kristi and I have been compiling a book and doing a lot of promotion, and there's a lot of notes. And that's really not that useful, so I need to go and do something a little more detailed. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add quotes around it. So if I add quotes, it will change it from searching for notes that have Untethered with Evernote, any of those words, to the phrase Untethered with Evernote. And you can see it did a pretty good job of filtering it. It brought it down to 224 notes. Still not really that functional, but quite often just that minor search change will help me find exactly what I'm looking for. In this case, I'm going to add a source. That's one of my search parameters that I can add, and I know that my assistant created it on her desktop, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to the search, and then I'm going to add another one and say it contains to-do checkboxes, because I'm aware that it has checkboxes, and lo and behold, it filters it down to 18 notes, which are easily something that I can scan through, or, as I've just shown you, I can change the sort order and say, okay, what was she working on yesterday in our shared workspace? And lo and behold, up at the top, you can see that that search, Untethered with Evernote, at the number 1, created on the desktop containing to-do lists with that phrase, Untethered with Evernote, is appearing. And when I it narrowed it down to 18 notes at number 2, and number 3, I changed the date that it was updated, and that put it to the top. And I was able to find the information that I wanted. And that all happens very, very quickly. The last thing I just want to really point out is that if you're on Evernote Business, at point number 4, you can see that you're going to get a prompt that says, there's actually some context and some notes in your company library that other people in your organization have created that might be related to your search. Would you like to look at those? So there is a prompt for those of you that use Evernote Business to help you to understand that other people have been working on a similar topic and might have something to add to your find. All right, so with that, I'm seeing any questions in the Q&A pod, but Kristi, I don't know if you have anything to add before we move on to the next section. If anyone has questions, it's a good time for us to answer them, but I'm sure Kristi's got a few points that I might have overlooked.
I think that was a great summary of some of the different ways that you can use the more advanced search criteria. And if all of that seems a little overwhelming, it's okay. Use regular search. And, I rely really heavily on that. I rarely notes. I really rely on search to help me be able to find them. And luckily, the Evernote search is very powerful and it makes it easy to do. So, but lots of good tactics for being able to find what you are looking for, which I like.
Awesome.
All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions, so if it works for you, Stacey, I'm going to just take us into the coming soon section.
Perfect.
Okay. So if you watched our Hangout from the conference, you heard us talk about this a little bit, or maybe you've read some of Evernote's blog posts about the new features that are on their way. One of the ones that I'm the most excited about is context, and this will, while not technically a search feature, it does help you find resources and reference material as you're working in Evernote. So the example that Phil showed is that he was preparing for a meeting with someone, and he's typing in Jurassic Pigeon somewhere in that note, and it finds in the background a reference to that in the Wall Street Journal, and he can then from there pull up that reference and then copy information from that as a citation into that note. You can imagine, as a writer, I am very excited about this feature because normally what happens for me is my research, I make notes about what I'm going to look for, but then I go out and Google and do a bunch of research and try resources, and this will help you do that. The other thing that you'll notice there is that it's pulling in from LinkedIn. So if you're typing somebody's name, so for example, I met with a new vendor yesterday, if I had been typing their name into the note, that with the new context features, it will pull up that person's LinkedIn profile for me. So I don't even have to be connected to them on LinkedIn. It's going to go find their profile for me. So rather than me having to go to Chrome or whatever browser you're using, LinkedIn, and then search for them, Evernote's going to be pulling in that information from a variety of resources. They had a list of about 8 outside sources that they'll be pulling from, and they're going to be regularly adding to that. Wall Street Journal, LinkedIn, Fast Company, TechCrunch, Inc. Magazine, just some really great business resources, Factiva for business users. So I think this is going to be a very powerful tool for those of us who are pulling in material or just prepping for meetings and really being able to make sure that we have to be thorough without having to track things down from multiple sources, and Evernote's going to be anticipating what we need. And I love that. So this is definitely going to make my life a lot easier, and I think it will for other users as well. My understanding is this is going to be premium and business, so definitely a reason to upgrade if you haven't. And there are a variety of other new features coming as well. Stacey, do you want to hit on those, or you want me to do them?
If you want to just advance the slide, that'd be great. Yeah.
Sure.
So, by the way, I was sitting next to Kristi when Phil Libin announced that feature, and I think she about jumped out of her chair with anticipation. So
I almost cried.
It was really cool. So we look forward to seeing that. And then we just wanted to spend a little time telling you some of the other notable features that will be Evernote has promised will be launched this year that were announced at the conference. And the first is the web client, which actually is available in beta now. So if you go into evernote.com and sign in on the web, you can opt in to experience the new web client today. And the point of the web client is to allow for distraction-free writing or distraction-free composition. And it could be in the capacity of what Kristi does in terms of writing an article, but it really can just be about composing your thoughts or doing a proposal or compiling a task list. The reality is that that is one of the 4 core functions that Evernote is focusing on, writing, that the modern knowledge worker needs to do, and they've redeveloped the web client in order to support that. So the functionality of the old web client is there. It may not appear that way, but what they've done is they've taken the web interface and had all the functionality stripped away until you, in essence, need it. So you're not going to see the formatting bar unless you need to highlight text and then get it bolded or italics.
And you know, Stacey, I've actually been using this week. I'm working with a new client. They gave me a computer. I didn't want to install my Evernote on it, so I've been using the web client. And that distraction-free writing when you're taking notes in meetings is fantastic because you don't have your other notes kind of off to the side, pulling at your attention. And so the ability to take digital notes and still be really focused is fantastic.
Yeah, and it's, I think it's supporting kind of how modern knowledge workers work, and it's really on the leading edge of that. So give it a try. We are enjoying it, and it's beautiful. It's visually beautiful as well. So really great stuff.
It is beta, so there are a couple of things that are a little wonky, but I know they're going to work those out. So.
Yeah, just keep that in mind. The second thing that's coming that we got really excited about is Scannable. And what Scannable does is it makes the digitization of paper much easier. From any iOS client, modern iOS client, you can actually take a picture of any document and then have the ability to do something with that document from your mobile device. So what you can do is take a picture of an 8.5 by 11 flyer And by the way, you don't even have to click the screen. You simply just point it at the flyer, and it will recognize the borders of the image and create a beautiful scan of it. And then you have the ability to do lots of things with that. You can email it off to someone. You can add it to your Evernote account. You can mock it up with Sketch. It's a very transactional, that's the word they're associating with it, technology, where they allow you to quickly digitize things and then move them around. And then they built an integration of Scannable with the Fujitsu desktop Evernote Scanner, which actually allows people to put anyone in an office using is it Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, Kristi, do you know?
I don't remember specifically what they said, but yeah, starting it from your phone.
Yeah, so from your phone you can walk up to the Fujitsu scanner and put in 12 documents and then have those images instantly appear on your phone so that you can then either add them to your Evernote account or move them along to some other person in your organization or outside your organization. So it really expands the functionality of the Fujitsu desktop Evernote scanner, which up to this point has to always be tied to one machine, one Evernote account. So it makes it a very functional workspace for your entire office. And then the scannable feature for those of us on iOS devices really gives us a very quick way to digitize the paper that's still a reality in our world. So
what I thought was interesting about that from if you have to do multiple things with a piece of paper, so for example, I worked with a client that required that I log expenses in Concur, which is an expense tracking system, and then I wanted them for my purposes in Evernote, so I was having to scan it, log it, go put it in Evernote, and there were a lot of steps to that process. But with Scannable, particularly with the new Concur integration that's coming, you'll be able to say, okay, take this, send it to Concur, take this, send it to Evernote, and it'll basically be just a couple of clicks. So I think that'll make people who have to do multiple things with something, this will make your life so much easier.
And that's supposed to come again also before the end of the year.
Yes.
There is a beta that you can put an email in to sign up for. I think it's evernote.com/scannable. We'll add that to the links in the Hangout below as well. The next feature that we got excited about is Work Chat, and this is for Evernote Business users. This is going to bring collaboration in Evernote Business really up of many, many notches. So you're going to be able to actually have chat dialogues with other people in your organization around particular notes and particular projects. So they showed us some screenshots on stage where you'll actually see a little avatar of the person that is viewing the note, so you'll be able to know what people are active in the system and what people are actually active on a particular note, and then you can message them and have a conversation around the content of your Evernote account and presumably your project right there within Evernote. So no need to leave that. You can do everything you need to do right there in the system, and it's going to obviously pull in with the context stuff that Kristi was talking about with LinkedIn profiles as well as the other content. So it's all going to collaborate together, but that's a feature that we have yet to see Evernote tackle and should be here by the end of the year.
I think about the process of writing the book and how much easier our lives would have been, because instead we were using messaging and we were in Evernote and we're chatting back and forth, and just to be able to do it from inside the tool would have been fantastic. So this is going to be great when we do the next revision.
Absolutely. And then the final feature we wanted to highlight today is Presentation Mode 2.0. So they're going to be revamping Presentation Mode, and this isn't necessarily about doing a slide deck to an audience. This is about collaborating in meetings and using your notes to have a fluid conversation that makes meetings suck less, as Phil would say. And this is about really being able to sit in a small room with other users, have your laptop there, and have that TV screen that's up on the wall be showing your notes in a way that is visually appealing and helps to move work forward during your meeting. And they've built some smart functionality into presentation mode so that there will be some natural breaks in your content and the formatting of the slide based on rules and other formatting elements that you might put into your slides. So I anticipate Kristi and I will probably do a whole hangout on air regarding presentation mode once it becomes a little bit more established, but we're very excited about the opportunities that are kind of coming up with that. Do you have anything to add to that one, Kristi?
Yeah, I just think this has been a great tool for me when I do facilitations. You know, creating a PowerPoint works well when you are when you're giving a speech and you have a point that you want to make, but when you're really facilitating a conversation and you're trying to create an outcome together and brainstorm, having a slide deck kind of really gets in the way. So I think this presentation mode where you can be a fly and everybody can still see it on the screen is going to be a really dynamic, great way for teams to work together. And I've been able to use it really effectively. The one thing I missed was the being able to have transition breaks where I could decide what was going to be on each screen. And I think that'll be a great, powerful tool that kind of takes us to the next level.
Yeah. So we're looking forward to all that Evernote's launching in the next couple of months. That's a highlight of some of the things we think are going to be most meaningful for how we work. In conclusion, we will be happy to answer any questions if you want to queue them up in the Q&A pod, but be sure to check out our resources page for the book. That's where we add all the most current information and updates to the book until we do a revision of it, which won't be for a while. So joining the resources notebook can really kind of help you move forward. And then if you want to connect with us socially, there's several places that you can do that. We have active discussion in the Facebook group /Get Untethered. The Google Plus page and the YouTube channel are kind of tied together, and that's where you can find the replays as well as future episodes of the Hangout on air that we're doing. And you follow us on Twitter and on the web as well. And then for those of you who are, I think the next slide's, go ahead and move to the next slide, thanks. If you want to get a version of the book, you can go to getuntethered.com. We have PDF, EPUB, Kindle, and we now have a print copy as well. So all of those formats are available there. The digital copy is $14.99 and the print copy is $19.99. You can get a 10% off the digital copy with October 10 GH if you haven't yet purchased the book. It expires October 23rd. And then we do offer an upgrade for those of you that have already purchased one version of the book, the digital version. If you want a different digital version, it's $4.99. And Kristi and I just got in print copies. If you're interested in a print copy and want to upgrade to the print copy, we're offering that for $13.99 versus the $19.99 rate. In order to initiate that, you just email info@getuntethered.com with your purchase order number, and we'll start the process for getting you the upgrade. And we hope you can join us next time. We're going to be talking about best practices for collaborating with Evernote. We did a whole chapter on this. It was the topic of my presentation at Evernote, the Evernote conference a couple weeks ago, and we want to talk about some of the best practices and tools for making sure you get work done with other people, both inside and outside your organization. So we're going to do that November 20th from 10 to 11. We hope you can join us live and ask your questions. But with that, if you need to reach us, you can have our contact information on the next slide, which I think Kristi can forward to. And we'd be happy to help you move along with Evernote in your organization if you are so inclined. So thank you for your time today. Kristi, do you have anything to add in closing?
Nope, just go find things.
Yeah, go find what you're looking for, huh?
Find what you are seeking.
All right, well, thank you for joining us today, and let us know what you'd like to see in the future. With that, we will see you next month.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.